Breathing thoughts. Nothing, if not extraordinarily perfunctory, would be the only fitting description for this visceral and verified top-tempo innings, which concluded with both pulse and power only a few beats and watts adrift of zonal parity, but kicked off with a near record-setting wake-up call to Wahoo's wearable cardiologist, who only acknowledged my heartfelt efforts after an unplanned 3-minute thrash, 2 attempts to recite his snugly strapped sensor, and my vocal threat to slap it in time with the pounding sensation I was experiencing in my chest. Explicitly unstructured forms and frequencies throughout 6 solitary laps of a sparsely populated flat loop, which resulted in a predictable landslide of seated batter-whisking, with initially lumpy pedal strokes becoming gradually smoother as the session progressed, and the odd stomp thrown into the mix for good measure. These unsaddled intervals were mostly triggered by my natural compulsion to stretch and recruit unused core muscles, since reinforcing one's upright posture with controlled resistance training can only help reduce the chances of sustaining those lower back injuries we so often hear people suffer when they got out of bed too quickly, or swiveled away from typing yet another bloody letter. And then, barely one planetary pirouette of Britain's drizzliest deluges later, more zonally aligned cruising around Watopia's comparatively sun-blushed coast, in aerobic terms close to base tempo's greenish-blue border, and sandwiched between various housebound chores. Can't say that I paid much attention to any monitored and metered metrics whilst regarding the ocean tunnel's ever-richer array of marine wildlife, farther-reaching coral reefs, and watching mini-subs give manta rays a suitably broad berth. Though assuming the usual scientifically implausible scenarios involving pedal-propelled dynamos equipped with the necessary transformers to round down rippled AC to smoothly regulated DC, then deliver the precise voltage and amp outputs required to power any connected devices, along with the equally preposterous notion that a flawless level of efficiency could be maintained when converting kinetic to electric energy, then I estimate that during 2 strictly surge-protected hours, I spun and stomped out roughly twice the sustainable watts needed to keep the mini LEDs that backlight the locally dimmed IPS panel of my faithful Asus PG32 UQX monitor projecting Zwift in non-HDR at between 60 and 80 utterly buttery G-synced frames per second, and the highest of its 5 available resolutions. This option, like the others, amounts to a pre-configured quality profile, and also enables the game's maximum detail levels, including greater draw distances, a larger number of foreground objects, not least denser forestry and thicker foliage, along with more animated activities by the roadside and higher fidelity textures. It renders the game's content in 4K, aka UHD or 2060p, then if necessary either A, in full screen mode, scales it up or down to fit the connected display's native dimensions, or B, in windowed mode, resamples all rendered images to the resolution that is selected in the host system's GPU control panel, which typically forms a part of its driver software. These drawn frames are then up or downsized in accordance with the screen's optimum parameters, using either the graphics chip's integrated spatial scaler or one that is built into the monitor. Note that for all app-based versions of Zwift designed to run on tablet or smartphone operating systems, both the game's resolution and detail levels are determined by one of several fixed presets, attributed to the capabilities of the applicable device's hardware, with no options yet being available to alter either setting. This garishly colour-coded OSD, which was configured using MSI's popular software utility Afterburner alongside RivaTuner Statistics Server, monitors a broad array of real-time data points relating to the performance of whichever game the user wishes to benchmark, together with detailed information regarding how and to what degrees various key system components and resources are being utilized. The relatively low average frame rate for what is a graphically undemanding title coincides with the diminished GPU occupancy one would expect, even for an aging flagship card, like Nvidia's Ampere-based RTX 3090 Ti, as used here, whilst power consumption throughout the session never exceeded 50% of this monolithic chip's official TDP. The reason for both these anomalies can be explained by accessing the Processes and Performance tabs within Windows Task Manager, which show that barely 5% of my system's ancient Intel Xeon W3175X CPU is being utilized by Zwift, which amounts to less than 1 of its 28 hyper-threaded cores. This classic example of CPU-bound speed is also known as a system bottleneck, and occurs when one underoccupied part of the computer is waiting for another overloaded one to complete a specific procedure. In this case, the video card is repeatedly being forced to wait before it can receive data from the CPU that will allow it to render successive frames. Like many older games and applications, Zwift has not been coded to dynamically utilize multiple CPU cores, meaning that the vast majority of threads on processors that feature any more than 2 are left idle, resulting in performance being effectively limited by the CPU's clock frequency and IPC rate.